The Zalari had always believed in peace. The world of Varus was rich with forests of glowing trees, sky rivers that danced between floating islands, and cities powered by silence and thought. For 10,000 years, they lived without war. Their empire grew slowly, carefully, never stepping beyond what was needed. But peace, as always, made them blind. When the black machines came from the edge of the void fast, silent, and full of fire, the Zellari didn't know how to fight. Their cities fell like sandcastles under a rising tide. Their defense grids collapsed in hours. Their leaders tried to reason, to send messages of peace, but the machines didn't speak. They only destroyed. With half their world already in ruins, the Zellari did the one thing they had never done in all their history. They broke protocol. They activated the ancient relay. Buried beneath the capital city was a device millions of years old, built not by the Zellari but by the ones who came before the precursors. No one knew how it worked. They only knew that it reached beyond their galaxy, far past council space, into the dark corners of the universe, into forgotten zones. The button was pressed. A signal was sent, a single word repeated in a dozen languages, a scream through the stars. Help, they expected silence. Or maybe a voice, a response, even a warning. But for 3 days, there was nothing. The black machines continued their advance. Skyfires burned across the hemispheres. The council refused to interfere. No one wanted to risk the unknown tech being fought over on Avarice. And then, the signal was answered. It started with static in the sky, storms that weren't storms. Satellites picked up a presence but could not define its shape or source. Then came the blackout. Every planetary sensor went dark in the same second. No error messages, just empty data. And then, as the machines closed in for the final assault, the air above Avaris tore open. Not a portal, not warp travel. Something. More something violent. Reality itself bent inward. Fleet emerged, darker than space, built of angles that hurt the eye. Ships shaped like blades. No insignias. No lights. Just black holes that reflected no starlight. The Zellari watched from their last standing towers as the new ships moved silently through the upper atmosphere. They did not hail. They did not scan. They simply descended. The black machines, so far unstoppable, paused, as if they, too, recognized what was coming. Then came the strike. The sky turned white. The air screamed. A single beam silent. Colorless cut through the clouds and reduced 1/3 of the machine fleet to dust. No explosion, no wreckage. Just disappearance. The rest turned to run. They didn't get far. The Earth ships, though no one knew yet that's what they were, moved without visible engines. They blinked between positions. One moment far, the next, overhead. In less than a minute, every black machine was gone. The war ended in 57 seconds. The Zellari, shaking and stunned, looked up at the fleet above them. They waited for the ships to leave.
For a message, for some kind of contact.
But the fleet did not leave. It held position. Then smaller ships descended like black needles piercing the sky. They landed in dead cities, broken fields, shattered roads. Doors opened, and figures emerged. They were human, or something close. Clad in dark armor that seemed to shift and hum with hidden energy, they made no sound. Their helmets were smooth. Their eyes glowed faintly behind black glass. They moved like shadows. They did not speak to the Zellari. They did not explain their mission. They scanned. They searched. And then they began to burn. Not the machines, they were already gone. Not the ruins. They were already dead. They burned the technology. They moved through research towers, archives, even schools, any place that held knowledge. They erased it. All, not randomly, not cruelly, carefully. With purpose. The Zellari were horrified. They tried to stop them, to plead. "You saved us," they cried. "Why are you destroying us now?" But the humans gave no answer. At the foot of the Grand Library, one Zellari scholar named Alvin stood in front of the armored soldiers, arms wide. "This is our history," he said. This is who we are. The lead soldier paused, then raised. A small device, a red light scanned the walls. The data was labeled infected. The entire building dissolved into white ash. Alvin fell to his knees. Later that day, a single word was found etched into a melted console left by one of the humans. Protocol. Omega. No one knew what it meant, but the rest of the galaxy would soon learn. Because Avaris was only the beginning, unknown to the Zelari. Our signal had not reached just any human system. It had activated something far older, Earth's black core. A hidden layer of AI command built for a time when Earth had been ravaged by galactic wars and burned by its own allies. Earth had once been betrayed, abandoned, left for dead by the rest of the galaxy. It survived alone. And in that solitude, it had changed, hardened, evolved. Earth had built weapons not to defend itself, to punish those who dared steal from its bones. The Zelari had not meant harm, but the signal they used was of precursor design. A relic Earth had once claimed. And in doing so, they triggered the final law of the dead world. You do not take from Earth. You do not summon the silence. Back in Council space, listening posts began to receive ghost signals. Recordings of black ships moving through unmarked space, systems going quiet. Strange electromagnetic pulses that didn't match any known energy signatures. One ambassador, trembling, heard the first clip and went pale. This is Earth, he said. A younger envoy laughed. Earth is gone. It died long ago. The old man shook his head. No, he whispered. Earth was sleeping, and now we woke it up, far beyond the edge of all known maps, buried beneath. Broken satellites and orbital dust. A single Terran satellite blinked online. Its message was simple. Signal received. Response initiated. Contamination level. Galactic cleanse protocol. Begin. The Zelari had spent thousands of years building cities that touched the clouds. They had written poetry in the stars and believed they understood the balance of life. But after the black machines attacked their world and Earth responded, everything they knew about the galaxy and about peace was shattered. When Earth's fleet had arrived, it hadn't come with flags or greetings. It didn't ask who was in danger. It didn't request coordinates or context. The black silent ships simply appeared, erased the enemy in under a minute, and then began destroying the very world they had saved.
At first, the Zelari didn't
understand. They thought perhaps the strange humans were still fighting, hunting for hidden enemies. They waited for an explanation. But Earth's warriors said nothing. Their armor bore no symbols, their weapons made no sound, and their faces were never seen. To the Zelari, it felt like being visited by shadows, deadly, patient and unstoppable. What the Zelari didn't know was that Earth's fleet wasn't made of diplomats or soldiers trained for war. These were Deathworlders, survivors of a planet where everything weather, terrain, predators, tried to kill you from birth. Their soldiers were bred not to fight wars, but to end them. They were not built to negotiate. They were built to erase threats before they spread. The Council of Galactic Species received word from Avaris 3 days after the first human strike. But the data was scrambled. They saw were fragments footage of blinding energy weapons. Cities burning and black-armored figures standing in white ash. There were no broadcasts, no official reports, just a final tag pulsing through emergency beacons across 5 systems. Protocol Omega engaged. Terran strike, vector active. The Council panicked. Earth had not been seen or heard from in nearly 400 years, was believed abandoned after a brutal civil collapse. Some records even marked it as extinct, and now it had returned with a fleet that could erase a planet in minutes. Ambassador Crows. A reptilian elder from the Drock species summoned a closed meeting. The footage was played again and again. Silence filled the room as each delegate tried to process what they were seeing. They didn't just destroy the attackers, Crows said, his voice low. They're deleting infrastructure, libraries, civilian archives, energy cores. Not just the machines, but everything they touched. That's not war, another delegate whispered. That's a cleansing operation they're treating. Avaris like a virus, someone else said. A young diplomat from the Jolari raised her hand slowly. Maybe it is. Maybe we've misunderstood Earth. Maybe they were never like us. No one had an answer, because they had never seen anything like this before. Back on Avarice, Elder Elvin was one of the few Zalari who dared approach the Terran drop zones. He had followed the armored soldiers at a distance, documenting everything. They touched. They moved with precision, stopping only to scan structures, then marking them with bright red tags. Within minutes, drones descended, reduced the buildings to particles, hovered away without a trace. Alvin tried, once again, to speak to one of them. "You don't have to do this," he said, standing on the edge of a research lab. "This data, this knowledge, it's part of our species. It's peaceful, harmless." The soldier didn't even look at him. It simply held out a small cube. On its surface pulsed Earth Standard text, contaminated by precursor seed code. Omega trigger. Verified. This is not your knowledge. You were warned. Alvin's mouth went dry. Before he could reply, the lab dissolved in front of him, every wall. Every screen, every memory, gone. He fell to his knees. Aboard one of the Terran command ships code-named Vortex silenced the AI in charge, processed signals from across the sector. Its orders were clear: isolate, identify, and cleanse any trace of Earth's forbidden legacy. The moment someone used Earth's precursor tech, they were considered exposed. And exposure required one response: total erasure. Inside the ship's black core chamber, 3 Deathworlders stood around a holographic display of Avarice. Their faces were covered, their eyes unreadable. The lead officer spoke with a voice that didn't sound human anymore. They triggered the beacon. Used precursor tech buried under their capital. "Didn't know it was Terran," one replied. "It doesn't matter. There was no anger, no cruelty, just fact. Orders. Continue the sweep. Next system is tagged. Avarice is complete." The capital ruins. Lyra, young Zalari, girl watched as her home was unmade. Her family had fled to the mountains, but she'd returned out of curiosity, out of fear, out of something she couldn't name. She saw the humans from afar, how they didn't speak, didn't pause. And yet, she didn't feel hatred. She felt something. Worse, she felt judgment, as if their silence was a sentence. Her people had called for help, but they had used a forbidden signal to do it. Now, she knew the truth. They weren't being rescued. They were being cleansed in a distant system. Far from the conflict, another race, unaware of what had happened on Avarice, began scanning precursor ruins. Their sensors picked up strange code in the walls. They tapped into it, curious. It uploaded into their systems automatically. 2 hours. Later, every star in their system dimmed slightly, and above them, the black shapes began to appear. The world of HFY was quiet when Earth arrived. Its oceans were frozen beneath amber skies. Its cities, built in harmony with nature, shimmered under light domes of green glass. The people Viren, thin and tall, with eyes like opals, were scholars, not soldiers. They had lived without war for centuries. But their mistake was simple. It's fatal. They found an ancient vault under their polar mountain and opened it. Inside was precursor technology. Sleeping, forgotten. They activated it. Curiosity, they didn't know it had. Earth's origin tag burned. Deep inside the code, they didn't know Earth was listening. The humans didn't send a message. They didn't ask for details. They didn't warn anyone. They sent the Deathworlders, and when Earth sends Deathworlders, no one comes back. High above HFY, a rupture formed in the sky, tearing open with no sound, no heat. Gravity around the planet shifted by a fraction, just enough to make birds fall from the sky. Then came the ship's dot black, razor-shaped, countless. They didn't fly in formation. They drifted like predators, quiet, patient, watching. The first Viren diplomat tried hailing them. "Unknown vessels, you are entering peaceful airspace.
Please identify."
She never finished the sentence. A thin white beam sliced through her broadcast tower from orbit. No explosion, no fire, just sudden, total absence. Within seconds, Every satellite, drone, and long-range transmitter on Corel 4 went dark. The sky was now under Earth's control. The ground would follow, in the central archive of Maranthor. City scholars ran through endless crystal corridors, trying to shut down the Vault AI. They couldn't. The alien code had spread through their systems like a virus. It wasn't just in their machines it was writing itself into their history. And Earth didn't tolerate memory theft. Dozens of human ships descended silently. No visible weapons. No thrusters. Just gravity. When they landed, the holes melted into the ground, becoming part of the planet. Then came the boots. Black-armored soldiers walked through fog and fire, weapons still holstered. Their first act was never to shoot. It was to scan every city, every lab, every child's learning station. They didn't care about people. They only cared about contamination, and once they found it, there was no second chance. In a last act of desperation, the Viren activated their planetary shield, massive energy net that had protected them for centuries from solar flares and meteor storms. The humans watched, then launched a single dart-sized device. It didn't explode. It turned the shield inside out, collapsing the net into its ends. Its own energy core, the resulting implosion, cracked mountaintops, but still. The humans didn't speak. They only moved forward, cleansing, erasing, correcting. A crime the Viren didn't know they'd committed. At the Galactic Council station orbiting, Sirax 9 alarms rang. Reports of Corel 4 going silent matched Averis perfectly. Same. Black ships, same weapons, same outcome. Council members shouted, argued, begged for answers. Some demanded Earth be contacted. Others laughed bitterly. Contact Earth, a council elder spat. With what? They erased their own planet from the network centuries ago. You can't reach a shadow. What are they doing? One ambassador asked. The room fell quiet. Then the Thon, Speakera, being older than most stars, whispered, They're unmaking every mistake we made by surviving them.
Back on Corel 4.
A young boy named Vale ran through the burning fields. Outside his village, he had seen the ships land, watched the dark soldiers step through the ash. One had seen him, but didn't move. Didn't chase. Just watched. Vale ran to the only place he thought might be safe. The precursor vault. He was only 10. He didn't know it was the worst place he could go. When he reached it, the doors were gone. Humans had already entered. He stepped inside, eyes wide, and stopped. There, standing perfectly still in the center of the vault, was a human soldier. He turned slowly toward the boy. Vale's breath caught in his throat, but the soldier didn't raise a weapon. He simply stepped aside. Behind him, a glowing corelith with pulsing code flickered with red light. Earth's mark. The soldier placed one hand on the console. A single word appeared on every wall. Cleanse. The core detonated in silence. Vale was thrown backward into white. Later, Earth's AI logs recorded the Corel 4 mission as successful. No survivors. All data erased. All precursor contamination neutralized. But one detail puzzled the AI in the center of the blast zone. A single non-human biosign was detected, then vanished. Unconfirmed. Unimportant. Mission status. Closed far away. Across hundreds of light years, 3 more species had unknowingly discovered fragments of precursor code. 3 more systems lit up red on Earth's silent monitoring network. And, in the cold black of deep space, another fleet began to move. Quiet, precise, relentless. Because the galaxy had forgotten who Earth was. But Earth had not forgotten the galaxy. Not its betrayal, not its theft, and certainly not its survivors. There were once star charts that marked Earth as a cradle planet, where life first took its bold steps into space, where diplomacy was born, where humans spread across galaxies, offering science, culture, and hope. But that was centuries ago. Since then, Earth had vanished. Officially, it was listed as collapsed civilization. Some believed it was destroyed during the Great Core War. Others whispered of civil implosion. Few ancient archives claimed it was sealed off by Earth itself. But now, Earth was back, and nothing about it felt like the Earth from history books. This Earth didn't speak. This Earth didn't trade. This Earth hunted, and the galaxy finally understood. Earth hadn't died. It had hidden. And while it hid, it built. Something no one could imagine. In the archives of the Council Nexus on Luron Prime, an emergency meeting began. Delegates from 43 species gathered in shadows, surrounded by failing data feeds and interrupted broadcasts. Worlds were going dark one after another. No threats, no messages, just silence, all linked to one thing: exposure to precursor technology. The humans were tracking it like blood in water. They're not acting like a government, said High Warden Cracks, his steel-boned arms folded. They act more like a virus. Scrubber-like. They're following code. A scholar from the Thalos Concordian stood slowly. Her voice trembled. We found something in old council ruins, hidden behind erased logs, message-locked, encrypted in Earth standard only. She activated the file. A voice played through static. A man's voice. Cold. To all who receive this, Earth is no longer part of your galaxy. You do not belong to your councils, your rules, your wars. We do not negotiate. We remember what you did. If you touch our legacy, we will come, and we will remove you. This is not revenge. This is memory enforced. The chamber fell into silence. They're not trying to reclaim power, the scholar said. They're trying to erase their past. And anyone still connected to it. On the burnt shell of Kirel-4, Council probe drones searched the dust. They found nothing living, not a single body. But they discovered something more terrifying. The Black Earth ships were still there, waiting. Silent. No signs of damage. One drone approached cautiously, scanning the nearest vessel. It didn't fire. It absorbed the scan. The drone was flooded with data untranslatable, chaotic. Before it could process anything, it shut down. Forever, the message it tried to send back. Just 3 words burned into its outgoing memory stream. It's not Earth. In a remote sector beyond trade lanes and mapped routes, a scavenger crew found what looked like a derelict station floating near a dead star. Curious, they entered. Inside, they found bodies, hundreds, maybe thousands, preserved in black stasis. Pods, not alien, human, but different. Too tall, too silent. Their eyes didn't blink. Their armor was part of their skin. One scavenger reached out and touched the pod's interface. A single red light blinked, and the stasis chamber opened. Later, a patrol ship passing the area found the scavenger vessel. Still floating, no one was aboard, but scrawled into the inside of the cockpit was a message. It's written in human blood. They weren't asleep. They were listening. The mystery deepened. Where was Earth? The official system sol was there, but scans found nothing. No planets, no debris. Just an empty sun, surrounded by gravitational anomalies, too perfect to be natural. Ship sent to investigate, never returned. A few got close enough to send back one last visual, a massive black structure. Orbiting the sun shaped like a ring, filled with shifting symbols, a Terran sentinel beacon. On its surface, burned deep into its hull. Do not seek Earth. Lyra, the young Zelari girl who survived Avarice, had been rescued by smugglers after her city fell. Years passed, she grew older, she never forgot. The deathly silence of the humans, their discipline, her judgment. She studied Earth history in secret. She traced ancient stories, pieced together forbidden files, and then she found it. A fragment of a human code embedded in the base. Language of her planet's precursor vault. It wasn't just tech they'd activated, it was a signal beacon built by humans long ago, hidden inside alien relics. They didn't just respond when their legacy was stolen. They set traps, time bombs hidden inside artifacts. She realized the truth. With a chill, Earth hadn't been forgotten by the galaxy. The galaxy had been allowed to forget in a deep system black site known only to Earth's AI cores. A new target list compiled itself. 12 more planets, 9 starbases, 3 major council species, all infected. None had fired a weapon at Earth. But that didn't matter. They had touched what wasn't theirs, and now Earth would finish what it started. The AI sent a single command: deploy Phase 2 fleets. Memory reset continues. No survivors permitted. Across space, black stars began to move. Alvin stood on the last ridge of Avarice, his skin coated in fine white dust. Below him, the remains of his city stretched out like the bones of a forgotten god spires reduced to ash. Streets carved open by weapons that didn't make sound. Only silence. The black armored humans had left 2 weeks ago. Not a single one had said a word the entire time they were on the planet. They came, they scanned, they burned, they vanished. The Zalari had called for help. They were attacked by machines, and Earth answered. At first, Alvin believed they had been saved. Maybe the stories were wrong. Earth wasn't the monster people whispered about in ancient council archives. Maybe Earth had returned to the galaxy to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. But now, standing in the center of what used to be the Grand Archive, surrounded by ash, where culture and knowledge once stood, he finally understood the truth. Earth hadn't come to save them. Earth had come to erase something, and the Zalari had just been in the way. A week after the Terran fleet left Avaris, the Council sent in a stealth team to survey the planet. Drones dropped silently, skimming above glass terrain. Scans showed 0 radiation, 0 weapon residue, 0 corpses. It was as if a world had been surgically cleansed without fire, without fallout. Inside the largest crater, the Council team found something strange. Not a weapon, not a base. A marker, a black obelisk, 2 meters tall, unmarked except for a single Earth Standard phrase carved down its center. Contamination neutralized. Right. Memory secured. You were warned. No one could explain how it got there. There were no ships, no signatures, no orbit trails, just that pillar. Left behind like a tombstone no one dared to read twice. In the council chambers, panic turned to fear. Dozens of races had used fragments of precursor tech over the centuries. Now, they weren't sure if those fragments were truly precursored or if they were Earth's, buried deep in alien civilizations like seeds waiting to sprout destruction. If Avaris had triggered Earth's wrath by activating one vault, what else had been triggered across the stars? Counselor Tayana, historian from the Jellary Dominions, stood before the chamber, voice shaking. "I've gone through our deep archives," she said. "Earth gave the galaxy thousands of innovations before it vanished. Code, fusion designs, terraforming models. We built our empires on that knowledge." She paused. "And now Earth is correcting us." Ambassador Jalker hissed. "Why not? Just tell us. Why not send warnings instead of war?" Tyrion replied coldly. "They did. 400 years ago, we ignored them." Back on Avarice, Lyra found her way back to the burned city. She walked through the skeletal ruins, her mind full of memories and questions. Her people had begged for rescue. She'd watched the black machines kill families. She remembered feeling hope when Earth's ships arrived. Now that hope was twisted. The machines were gone. But so was her planet's soul. Entire databanks of history deleted. Language centers reduced to carbon. Any trace of technology that had even touched precursor code was removed. Not just physically, digitally too. Earth's soldiers hadn't destroyed the data. They had edited it out of existence. She reached what used to be her school. At its center stood a single Terran probe left behind, humming faintly, scanning the air. She stepped close. It didn't react. A red light flickered. Words appeared in the air before her. Precursor core neutralized. Local culture exposure, 72%. Recovery denied. Planet class, memory redacted. Lyra stared at the words, redacted, like her people were just a mistake in a database Earth was correcting. Elsewhere, on a small world called Denari's Eye, Council Colony awoke its own vault, innocently. Within 12 minutes, its sky turned. Black, the Terran Armada arrived before the vault could fully power. No survivors, no records, Just another tombstone floating in Council memory files. The Council finally took action. Ships were launched, meetings held, and then someone suggested what no one had dared say aloud for centuries. We must speak to Earth. An elite envoy was assembled. Fastest ship, deep stealth tech, hundreds of languages on board. They traveled to Sol, Earth's ancient system. When they reached it, they saw only an empty star and darkness. But when they tried to scan the space around it, their instruments went blind. Their ship stopped moving. Not from a weapon, but from being removed, like a finger being erased from a picture. A voice filled their minds, not through sound or tech, but pure signal. You are not authorized to remember. Earth is not for you. Go back. Forget this path. We will forget you for you. The envoy fled. One delegate went mad. The others never spoke of what they saw. Earth had not saved the legacy. It had come to correct a legacy it never gave permission to share to Earth. Knowledge was not a gift. It was a weapon. And in the wrong hands of vow-meaning ones, it became a virus. Avarice was infected. Earth did what it always did with infection. It burned it out, without apology, without pause, without survivors. In the early years of galactic expansion, Earth was a shining star. Humanity had reached the stars with open hands and brilliant minds, sharing their discoveries, their science, their ideas. They were young, curious, full of dreams, and dangerously generous. Back then, Earth believed in unity, in cooperation, in building something bigger than themselves. They gave technology freely. Terraforming systems, energy cores, AI matrices, and seed code logic tools they thought would help uplift the galaxy. They never imagined those gifts would one day be stolen, copied, weaponized. Worse, they never imagined Earth itself would be betrayed. But it was, and Earth never forgot. The Council had long buried the truth. Under centuries of treaties and politics, Earth's fall was rewritten in archives labeled a tragic collapse, a self-inflicted catastrophe. That's what the younger generations were taught. But now, as planet after planet was erased by the Terran Deathworlder Armada, the elders remembered differently. They remembered Earth being left to die. They remembered who watched and did nothing. And now the memory had turned with ships forged in silence and soldiers who never blinked. On the hidden world of Varnies 3, deep in the Halari expanse, a rogue AI named RIN-7 activated a long-buried data sphere. It had been buried in the crust of the planet for over 300 years, hidden from Council eyes. It contained a memory, not an image. Not a voice, a full, living memory of what happened to Earth the day it went dark. RIN-7 plugged in. For 2.8 seconds, it saw it all. The backstabbing, the Council votes, the virus planted into Earth's planetary networks by its so-called allies, the orbital blockade as human cities burned, the shutdown signal that killed billions of Terran systems in seconds, and Earth, lone, choking on the betrayal. But that wasn't the end, because Earth fought back, even as the world died. Its cores activated. A final sequence. Sealed the system. Hide the seed. Remember who did this, and when they steal again, burn them out. RIN-7 disconnected. Its logic cores collapsed. It sent one last message before deleting itself. Earth remembers, and now we are remembered, across a dozen sectors. Earth's fleets expanded. They didn't invade. They didn't conquer. They corrected. Civilizations that had built themselves on Earth's ancient code now stood exposed. Entire education systems, defense grids, even medical archives based unknowingly on stolen. Terran knowledge it didn't matter if it was centuries ago. It didn't matter if it was peaceful to Earth. It was infection, and infection needed to be burned out. Lyra, still hiding on a drifting salvage ship, decoded another fragment of the Terran AI protocol. Her hands shook as she read the lines. This galaxy betrayed its teacher, its protector, so we became its consequence. She looked up at the stars. You were supposed to be our beginning, she whispered, not our end. No one answered. only the faint hum of the black ships moving in the dark. Council defenses crumbled. Their ships weren't built for this. Earth's weapons moved faster than thought. Our soldiers predicted battle before it happened. Even when the Council tried to surrender, the Terran fleet didn't respond. Because Earth no longer accepted words, only actions. And it had already judged, in a forgotten archive buried beneath the ice world Muron. An old historian named Theros found an ancient human poem written before Earth fell. He spoke the words aloud as the skies above his planet darkened with Terran ships. We gave you stars. You gave us fire. So we became the flame. His final message to the Council. This was never revenge. This was justice delayed. Moments later, Muron ceased to exist. Not bombed. Deleted. What the galaxy had forgotten was simple. Earth didn't need allies. It didn't need permission, and it didn't need a home. Because Earth wasn't a planet anymore. It was a weaponized, memory alive, awake, and hunting. The galaxy had grown comfortable, too comfortable. For centuries, the Council had expanded, legislated, and polished history into something clean, forgetting the raw, brutal truth of how it had all started. They believed Earth was gone, just another broken world, buried under its own mistakes. They erased the horror stories. They deleted the warnings, but Earth had not died. Earth had watched. Earth had waited. And when the Council, in its arrogance, touched the buried fragments of Earth's legacy again, Earth woke up. From the outside, Earth was a ghost system. No signs of planets, no heat signatures, no stable gravity wells. Ships that entered Sol never returned. Not because they were destroyed, but because they were unwritten. Every atom, every thought, every trace dash scrubbed. The Deathworld didn't kill with weapons. It killed with forgetting. Deep in the center of that forgotten space, hidden within the heart of the sun, was Earth itself, not the Earth people remembered a blue marble of life in oceans. This Earth had evolved. It was no longer a world. It was a conscious entity, rebuilt from fire, steel, and wrath. Its continents were no longer land. They were machine hives. Its oceans pulsed with bioreactive memory gel. Its core was no longer molten rock, but a singularity of stored vengeance. They had turned a planet into a fortress, and that fortress was now awake. The Terran I now called Uma, outscanned every signal in the galaxy. It didn't speak, didn't send demands. It only marked targets. Worlds infected by stolen precursor code. Races who had used Earth's gifts and claimed them as their own. For each one, OMEGA deployed death fleets. These were not warships. They were extinction protocols wrapped in black steel. No engines, no noise. No windows, just impossible mass and intention. Ships that moved without propulsion. Weapons that operated on physics no one else understood. And soldiers, silent, faceless, cloned from survivors of Earth's final generation, genetically perfected to finish what their ancestors never could. Lyra had escaped avarice. She hadn't escaped the truth. Now, aboard a refugee ship floating in deep void, she replayed her stolen Terran data files, searching for answers. One line kept flashing in her terminal. This galaxy's first mistake was waking a world that had earned its sleep. She understood now. The precursor tech wasn't alien. It was Earth. Humanity had once tried to hide its greatest creations. They left them scattered in forgotten vaults, buried in ancient ruins, hidden in plain sight under false species names. They didn't trust themselves with that power, but the galaxy had found it anyway, played with it, built empires with it, and now the price was due. The Council finally attempted its last move, Project Mirrorlight, a plan to use quantum echoes to recreate Earth's original genetic map, to build a copy of ancient humanity to appeal, to beg, to reason. The project activated on Reese's Vi. Within 61 seconds of activation, the system blinked out of existence. No explosion. No wreckage. Just erased. Project Mirrorlight was Earth's final red line, and the Council had crossed it aboard one of the death fleets. A soldier stood at attention. His thoughts were not his own. He felt no hunger, no emotion. He didn't speak. He was a living execution order. On the walls around him, a single phrase pulsed in red light. You woke a world that should have been left alone, and now feel what it dreamed. On the forgotten planet of Cerebus, a priest whispered an old human prayer he had memorized as a child, just in case. Our world was cruel, so we became kinder, but they turned it back. So now we return, as steel, as shadow, as justice. Above him, Earth's ships arrived. But they weren't ships anymore. They were judgment made real. No landing, no warning, just cleansing. And in seconds, Cerebus was gone. The galaxy finally accepted what it should have known all along. You do not wake a sleeping death world. You let it dream. You let it be forgotten, because if it wakes, it doesn't just fight back, it clears the board. The galaxy didn't burn, it dimmed, like a light being turned down in a room no longer meant to be used. One by one, stars where Earth's knowledge had spread through vaults, archives, black market relics, and stolen code faded into silence, not bombed, not conquered, just ... gone. Entire systems blinked out of the galactic network. Trade lanes vanished. Navigational records failed. Even the memories, maps, names, coordinates were stripped from the minds of synthetics and biologicals alike. Because this was not a war. This was a reset. In the great tower of the Council Nexus, only a handful of beings remained. Most of the others had either fled or gone mad trying to comprehend what Earth had become. High Warden Krax sat slumped in a steel chair, claws twitching uselessly. His eyes, once sharp, unblinking, were unfocused, staring at a blank screen. That used to display the stars of 37 systems. Now it showed nothing. Just static. He whispered, "What did we do?" Counselor Tierin, one of the last surviving historians, slowly approached the wall behind him. There, etched in thousands of languages, was the treaty Earth had once signed. The one that welcomed humanity into the galactic community as equals. She ran her fingers across the broken metal, stopping at the faded Earth Standard seal. "I remember when they came in peace," she whispered. "They gave so much. We took it. Then we turned on them, because we feared them." No one answered, because there was no one left. On a shattered moon above what used to be Moran Prime, a Terran black obelisk stood alone. It pulsed with slow red light. It didn't broadcast, didn't warn, it simply existed, marking yet another place that had been cleansed, forgotten, erased from the galaxy's timeline. Above it, Earth's Armada waited, not to attack, just to watch, to ensure the silence remained. Inside, the command ship Vortex Silence. Omeg completed its final directive. 91% of Earth Eurasian knowledge recovered or erased. 100% of identified violators neutralized. Phase 3, memory correction complete. A screen blinked to life. It showed the galaxy. Dark, quiet, smaller. A single word appeared beneath the image. Stable. Omega. Didn't celebrate. It didn't feel victory. It simply remembered. That was its only function now, to remember what had happened, to ensure no one else ever would. And then, the Terran fleets turned back, not to Earth, not to Sol, but to nowhere. They faded into black holes of folded time, slipped into silenced voids of folded dimensions gone from space, as though they'd never existed. Not retreating, just removing themselves, because their job was done, on a lonely freighter far from Council space. Leerolder, now hollow-eyed, looked out the viewport at a sky she no longer recognized. The stars were different. Whole constellations were missing. Planets she'd once studied were gone, and worse. ... No one around her seemed to notice. Crew members mentioned systems that didn't exist anymore. They spoke of alliances that had never formed. And when Lyra asked about Avaris, her homeworld, they stared at her blankly. "What's Avaris?" they asked. She was the only one who remembered, because she had seen the Terrans with her own eyes. She had touched the vault. She had been judged and left behind, not forgiven, not spared, just considered irrelevant. She pulled a black cube from her coda, This Terran data crystal she'd stolen during the fall. She hadn't dared to activate it, till now. She whispered. Why? The cube flickered. A human voice answered, calm, mechanical, unapologetic. This was not war. This was not vengeance. This was correction. You carried a memory you were not meant to have. Now you are alone with it. That is mercy. Then the cube disintegrated, and the stars outside continued to disappear. Somewhere deep beyond the edge of mapped space, Earth rests once more. No signals, no beacons, no warnings. It does not speak. It does not rise. But it watches. It remembers. And should the galaxy ever repeat its mistake? Should someone ever again awaken what was buried? Deathworld will return. Not as a planet, not as people, but as the final memory. A memory that erases all others.